Well, I'll be glad to. And it's amazing how we have life experiences and God's working behind the scenes, and we really don't know until later, or possibly not even in this lifetime, what He's doing. So, really, I have to start back to around, I think it was April of 2021. There was a couple, they were a godly couple, the hardworking couple. The husband, they were in their late 50s, and the husband felt ill one weekend, and they took him to the hospital. That weekend, he coded 3 times, and the wife was told by the doctor. His wife's name was Lucretia. Was told by the doctor, you need to call the family in because we don't expect him to survive the weekend. And her response to the doctor was, well, that's not up to you. And so they did call the family in and they prayed over him. He survived the weekend. It was a heart issue. But through that process, they realized that both of his kidneys were in renal failure. And the doctors told him at that point, and that was April of 21, you likely will not have 2 years of life and you need to find a kidney donor. And this was a brand new experience for them. This was a whole new world exposed to them. And so they started the process trying to figure out the insurance, getting on dialysis, which is such a terrible experience, as you know. Dialysis is a temporary band-aid to keep you alive until you can really get the situation solved. And so he started that process and started working through trying to find a donor, because they told him, as you said a while ago, you can expect a 6 to 8 year wait, and there's 100,000 people on the list in front of you. And also, this was during COVID. It's right after COVID, so he's dealing with all of those issues, dealing with the psychological as well as the pain, the spiritual impact, everything, and at the same time having to try to find a donor. Most in his family were not able to give for a variety of reasons, mostly health reasons, and so they were really distraught. And so fast forwarding about 9 months, in the March of 22, a friend of Lucretia's asked her to come to a women's retreat. It's called Walk to Emmaus. And it's a 3 day retreat. It's a wonderful experience. And Lucretia had gone before, but she was asked to come back and work as a volunteer on the retreat. Well, she didn't really want to go. She didn't want to leave her husband, but she ultimately decided that she would go. And she needed that uplift from the Lord. And so coincidentally, I also knew her friend. Her name was Judy Rainey. And Judy asked me to serve as the head spiritual, the head clergy on that same weekend. But I wasn't able to do it because it was in March of 22. And the reason I couldn't do it is because in 2022, I was invited to serve as the Appalachian Trail chaplain for that year. So I was going out on a 2,200-mile journey. I was so excited. I had a sabbatical from church for 6 months. Someone was preaching, and so I was going to get to hike the entire trail and just be there for the hikers, interact with them, and preach at certain churches along the path. And so I was very excited. And so I started that journey January 1st. I don't recommend hiking in the mountains in January. It was cold. and
No, that sounds really frigid cold.
Yeah, yeah. So I started January 1st, and I was about 100 miles into the journey, Jan, and I was on YouTube, and I had like 1,500 subscribers, and every day, I'm just in 2 or 3 weeks, and every day I was able to share my little moments from the mountaintop, where I'd share what God had laid on my heart while I'm hiking on the mountains, in the mountains. And so it was all going well. And I got into North Carolina, and all of a sudden, this major blizzard was coming in, and it was forecast for about 20 plus inches of snow, a couple inches of ice, 40-mile-an-hour sustained winds, and single-digit temperatures. So everyone got off the trail. And I was about a 3 or 4 hour drive from home. So Crystal came, that's my wife. Crystal came and picked me up, and I went home for a week or two, waiting on everything to thaw out from the blizzard. Well, while I was home, I got jury duty. Not only that, but I was appointed to the jury. So that took another couple of weeks of my time. And so after about a month, things at work and things at church started changing dramatically. And it became very apparent that I wasn't going to get to go back on trail. And so I
Mm,
was very disappointed in that situation. And I prayed. I said, God, why did you open all these doors for me? And now
mm,
seemingly they've just all shut. And I was kind of I was irritated. And I try to be real careful not to get mad at God, but
yeah,
I couldn't understand why.
yeah.
And so my friend Judy Rainey called me up and she said, I understand you're not going to be able to go back on trail. So would you consider being the head spiritual on this ladies retreat that I had asked you about months ago? I still need someone. And so I said, yeah, I've served several times on that on Walk to Emmaus, and it's always such a blessing. And so I agreed to do it. Well, that's a Thursday night through a Sunday night. And so
Mm,
the first morning, Friday morning, I went in the kitchen at the event center, and I was getting a cup of coffee. It was 5 o'clock in the morning, and I've never heard anybody up that early at Emmaus. So that's usually the time I get my coffee and I go sit down in the conference room and do my devotion, plan out the day. But this time it was different. As I'm getting my coffee, I hear in the other side of the kitchen, and there's a wall in between us that doesn't go all the way back, but it's about like a horseshoe shaped room. And I heard some lady speaking on the other side, and I couldn't make out what she was saying because it was a little bit of a distance and a wall between us. But then as she was upset, her voice elevated a little bit, and I was able to make out her saying, we've got to pray we can find someone that's O positive, that's willing to give up a body part. But how do you ask somebody for a body part?
mm,
And Jan, I just froze. And I had this sensation all throughout. And I didn't audibly hear the voice of God, but I had an overwhelming sense that God was saying, this is why I brought you off trail. I knew from my
mm,
military days that I was O positive. So I stepped around the corner and I was a little bit of emotional. And I said, I'm O positive. And she said, who are you? I said, I'm Crystal's husband. We haven't gotten to meet yet. But so she told me her husband's situation. And at that point, it had been almost a year since his diagnosis. So he was right at 1 year left to live.
mm,
And so I didn't know anything about that world. I didn't know anything about kidney donation. I knew my driver's license said organ donor on it. I made that decision when I was young, 16 years old. But other than that, I really didn't know anything. So she started filling me in on everything and telling me his situation and how difficult it was, and how he has dialysis 3 times a week, and the other days he does his best to work because they were self-employed, and so
mm,
he did his best, but he had to rest a lot. He was really, trying on his body. Well, then I found out. I started the process. I signed up. I did the little questionnaire, and within 15 minutes, Piedmont Hospital called me after I finished the questionnaire, and they started asking me questions and why would I want to do this for somebody that I don't know, and all these things. And so we started the process, and it took some time. It took a few weeks to go through the process, and they told me that he and I both had blood transfusions, and that's one of the
mm,
things that really prevents you from being a direct match, is because a blood transfusion really randomizes your blood. And
yeah.
I believe the phrase that she told me, Jan, was it would be, since you've had blood transfusions, it would be like two lottery winners uh, winning with the same numbers. And so they said, we have never seen it match, but you can do what's called a paired exchange. And I said, okay, what's a paired exchange? They said, I could donate my kidney to whoever I match and put him
Mhm,
down as the designee or the recipient, and then he would automatically go to the top of the list. I was like, well, that's
mhm,
great. Let's do that. I mean, I had to talk it over with my wife, and, it was not a snap decision, but it was pretty quick. And so we continued the process. I had to lose about 15 or 20 pounds. I told them that I did, but I actually only lost 12, but don't tell them. And so, uh,
your secret is safe with us.
okay. And so we continued this process of being tested in around August of 22. So now he's getting he doesn't have a lot of time left. And I still haven't
Mhm,
met him at this point. In August, we went in for our full day's workup. I went in one day, he went in a different day. And I got a call a few days later from Piedmont, and they said, we can't believe this, we've never seen this before, but it is as if you've had his kidney in your body the last 54 years. Everything is a perfect match. And they
Wow.
said this is a miracle. And
Yeah.
so that's how I became a live kidney donor. I met him a week before. The Emmaus community invited us all. Emmaus, by the way, is Emmaus. It's the town that Jesus visited the day after his resurrection. It's in Luke chapter 24, 19 through 35. But anyway,
Mm.
uh,
Yeah.
the Emmaus community called us together, and we met for the first time a week before the surgery, and we hugged, and he just said thank you, and I said anytime. Well, one time. And
Yeah, this is a one-time deal.
yeah, but the surgery went great. They wheeled me into his room the next day, and we got to talk. My wife did a little Facebook Live from there, and even that day, Jan, it changed me. And even that day, if you were to go back and watch that video on my Facebook page, I actually said, I don't remember it because I was kind of drugged up, but I said, if you ever get a chance to do this, you should do it. It was an
Mm.
amazing experience for both of us, and everything has gone great for him. He's got a new lease on life. He's not on dialysis anymore. Our birthdays are a day apart, by the way, and we're lifelong brothers. And that's yeah.
Wow.
So that's how I became a live kidney donor.
Okay, so I want everybody to be able to just like breathe a minute and process this whole story because Randy, I've heard most of your story before, but I love this opportunity because we're getting to go a little deeper here, and there are parts I had not heard. Which, by the way, just a side note, my husband Jim is really involved with that ministry and is about to serve on one here in Alabama in September. So
Okay.
it's an incredible experience on these weekends. So I'm glad that you brought that up for anybody that would be interested in looking into that. But um here is so many takeaways, and I know everybody can't see us, but I was reaching for my tissue too because it's so powerful and moving to think of how God really is always at work. Because first of all, the thing that stood out when it's Lucretia, is that
That's
the
right.
wife's name?
Yes.
So when they told her that her husband probably wasn't going to make it, but a day or two in the hospital, and she said, "That's not up to you." And I love that because that is that faith that will move mountains. And all we have to have is the faith of a mustard seed, right?
That's right.
And she had incredible faith that God was at work and something really good could come from this. But then to think that you had planned and scheduled and taken a sabbatical, and you were going to be going for 6 months on the Appalachian Trail, which is like incredible. I've heard of other people that do that, and I just can't even imagine. Look, I can't imagine hiking in January, but I really can't imagine hiking anytime. I am not. I love to appreciate the outdoors, but I'm not always in it. And everybody out there that knows me is probably dying laughing because I'm definitely a bit of a girly girl and I'm indoors most of the time. But that was just incredible that you were having all this momentum at the beginning of that hike and you were having impact and you were sharing, moments from the mountains and
Um,
having all these followers that were really hearing God's word and how he was moving on this trip. And then it just abruptly came to an end because of a blizzard, which is just like mind blowing that your wife had to drive up there in that cold, icy snow and get you. But all these things were happening that seemed so negative and they seemed a little defeating, if I could call it that, because you were frustrated, you were irritated, you had been preparing and planning. And then at the last minute, this opportunity that was still available. They had not found the clergy for that weekend of Emmaus.
Right.
And you were like, sure, I'm here now. I might as well do it. And that's how all this came about. And what also blew my mind is that even during all of your evaluation, you had still not met your recipient. And I know they do that for health reasons and HIPAA, violations and medical records. And, in case you were not a match, then they were going to try to, like at UAB and many hospitals around the country, they've got these kidney chains
Right.
where if you're not a match, yeah, they'll find someone that will be a match for the person you wanted to donate for. But I mean, when I said the phrase, if you don't find the kindness that you're looking for, then be the kindness. I mean, Randy, you took that to the stratosphere with being the kindness to someone and offering life to this person that you knew didn't have much time left. And all of the miracles that have to happen for these, transplants to take place. I mean, I know firsthand about waiting and growing sick and being told you don't have much time. And it's hard to comprehend that if you haven't lived through that.
Yeah.
So it's really amazing. There were a couple of questions that I wanted to touch on because you talked about talking to Crystal,
Yeah.
your wife, and I'm sure you talked to your 3 sons about, "Hey, I wanna give a kidney to someone that I do not know, and I've only met his wife once." I mean, what was their response, and how did they feel initially? Because obviously they got on board, right?
Yeah.
Talk us through that conversation.
Well, Crystal was actually serving on that weekend as well. So
Oh.
what actually happened is, I said, I would be glad to help. And Lucretia had told someone else, and I don't know exactly how it happened, but Crystal was walking down the hall, and one of the ladies said, I can't believe what your husband's going to do. And she's like, what's he doing? And so before I got a chance to see her, and um,
Hey, word travels fast, especially with women, right?
yeah, but I saw her a few minutes after that, and I told her what happened. And you know, Crystal is my rock. She is so strong. And she looked at me sincerely and she said, if this is God's will, I'm supportive of it. I've got questions. But so Lucretia's mother and her daughter were also serving on that weekend. So the 5 of us went to the chapel and we prayed right then that if it was God's will, that He would open the path, and He did. So the boys,
Mm.
they were all like, oh yeah, whatever, dad, if you want to do it, I hope I don't ever need one. But if I said, well, maybe if you do, someone else will step up. But and I
Mhm.
wanted to say one thing if I could, Jan. I know it seems like a big deal that this happened. It was a big deal for Russell, but Russell and Lucretia, they're the heroes of the story here. They were the ones that had to persevere through all of the challenges and not give up hope and keep looking. It truly was just a few weeks of my life for the rest of his. So it wasn't
Mm.
that big of um, a surrender for me to do it.
Oh, now see, there you go, making me cry again. A few weeks of your life for the rest of his.
Yeah.
I mean, that is just completely washing over me and just penetrating my heart so much because this is what some people truly have the ability to do. Because, like you said, their family member, they couldn't do it and they wanted to, but they couldn't. And there's a lot of reasons why people can't, but all it takes, that first step is just a screening phone call.
Yeah.
And then, you start this evaluation process. So if there's something that or someone that needs it, or maybe this is just something that is hitting some of our listeners, like I could do that. I could offer this gift of life to someone just by looking into giving my kidney because you mentioned the numbers. There are over over 100,000 people waiting for just a kidney. And something else that you said, and I know I can relate to this, I think most people can, that when they heard the word, Lucretia and Russell, that because of these heart issues, now he was in total renal failure, and they were talking transplants and things like that. I mean, people just don't understand this world because it's something we do not talk about a lot.
That's right.
I was in utter shock when I went into renal failure, and it was really it stops you in your tracks. And for me, I went through all those stages of grief. Right, the first one being denial was like, this can't be happening. But again, God is always, always at work. Wow. So Russell and Lucretia, do they live near you?
They're about 45 minutes away. Yeah.
Okay.
So they surprise me
So
at church sometimes, and we'll get together from time to time. Every week we're texting each other or calling each other. And he texted me just 2 or 3 days ago and said, "Hey, how are you feeling, brother? I love you." And I was like, "Well, I feel great. How are you feeling?" So, and we're both doing great. So
and this was in 22 that you actually gave your kidney?
yes, yeah, it was
2022. So
September
we're
30th of 22.
September.
Yep, September 30th of 22. Yeah.
So we're coming up on a 2-year anniversary. Well,
Yeah.
when you were talking about how your birthdays are 1 day apart, because like I know for me, I kind of count myself as having two birthdays. I've got my transplant anniversary, which is like, a whole new like birthday to me, and then my real birthday. So y'all actually now share a birthday together for him, right? And then
Yeah.
y'all got the 1 day apart for your actual birthday. So that is really, I mean, that is a really neat kind of fun fact about your story. Um, so speaking of how you're feeling and how he's feeling, tell our listeners about the recovery for you being a living donor. And I want them to hear, what the process is, and how the recovery went, and how you're living life now with one kidney. Because by the way, I am living with one functioning kidney as well. Most people that receive a kidney, they receive one. And that's another whole miracle part of this, is that we don't always have to have two. But I want to know how you're feeling. And then after we talk a little more about this, we're going to take a very short break because I want to get into your foundation and the work that
Great.
it's doing. But I'm just giving a little teaser for our listeners. Let's get into your process and your surgery and your healing time.
Sure. Yeah, because I haven't told you the best part of the story yet. But
Oh, okay.
so the surgery was September 30th of 22, and I mean, I woke up and I felt, well. It was rough. It was a rough couple of days because I just had a surgery. But I
Yeah.
was back home in 2 days, and he went home the day after I did, and 7 days after the surgery, I drove myself to the gym. I was off pain medication. I felt good enough to get. Now Crystal wasn't home, so so
I
she
was gonna
couldn't
say,
stop me. But yeah, I
you
wanted to
were
see.
unsupervised, Randy, and look what you did.
Yeah, I was a big boy. So I drove to the gym, and I now granted I got lightheaded doing calf raises, but and they stopped me, but it was that quick of a recovery. I didn't need any pain medication after 7 days, and within 6 weeks, I could not have told you that anything had ever happened to me. I still had limitations on how much weight I could pick up. I couldn't pick up more than 30 pounds for a couple of more months after that, but I have had zero issues with anything.
Mm.
And I have felt incredibly strong. I'm in the best shape of my life. My legs are a little sore because we had leg day at the gym this morning. But other than that, I feel wonderful. And it encouraged me to take better care of myself. But
Ah.
all of my numbers for my kidney function have gone within 6 months. They were back into my normal range with two kidneys. And Russell was wonderful. And so Yeah. So I'll tell you more after the break about what happened after that 6 week period. But you're talking about God's interactions and things that He has gone on. How things are going on behind the scenes that we're not aware of. Oh, the
Mhm.
journey since the surgery has been unfathomable.
Wow. And I love the fact because you were totally in my head. I was gonna ask, was this a motivator? Because you mentioned they wanted you to lose a little weight prior to giving your kidney. And it sounds like this has just really started something in motion for you to stay on top of your health and, get in the gym and get moving and, maintain that healthy weight. So it sounds like this was also kind of an instigator for that.
It was, and I want people to understand that life after kidney donation is it's not a negative, it's a positive. And I'm telling you, on the inside, it totally changes you to be the vessel through which God gives somebody life. It totally
Oh,
changes you.
yeah, I love that. I think that is such a wonderful high note to take a very, very short break, but do not go anywhere because we are coming back with Randy Simpkins and we're going to learn more about his testimony, his life after giving a kidney, and the path that God has led him on to start this foundation of End the Wait. So don't go anywhere. We will be right back.
All right, terrific segment. We are clear. Back into.
Okay, thank you. You're making me cry, Randy.
Am I loud enough? Am I doing okay?
I hear you great, and I think you're doing amazing.
Okay.
Matt, does this
Yep.
sound good?
Yep. Sounds good on my end.
Yay. It's so amazing and inspirational.
Uh,
I'm gonna.
Things are changing every day. We
Oh yeah.
have a big investor from St. Louis that's asking questions about what if he comes in with seven figures? Can we help his brother-in-law find a kidney? And we're like, we're going to help him whether you come on board or not. But I mean, I
Right.
won't mention that on your show, but it's been
Yeah.
the last month has been incredible.
Wow. Oh my goodness. It's amazing work that you're doing. Just amazing. And I think it's a topic that we just kind of people don't know to talk about it. I don't think that it's that they don't want to, and maybe sometimes it is, but I mean, I had never talked about transplant or organ donation. And it is hard. They do encourage you to try to find a living donor. And like my story, because I had so many amazing people like you trying to be a donor, but none of them were working out. Family, friends, strangers. Um, but God had a different plan because I wouldn't have gotten the pancreas too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I can look back now and I'm like, oh wow, God definitely knows what he's doing.
No. Yeah. Thank you. Bye, y'all. Yeah, I would love to hear your story sometime. I'm sure that it's pretty incredible. And
Oh,
and by the way, your intro, I would love for you to share that at my church every Sunday.
oh yeah,
It was so inspiring.
you. My grandmother used to always say that, and she's with our Heavenly Father now, but I took it from her because we said it all the time growing up.
Yeah.
There's even a song,
Oh, really?
"To Awake, Alert, Alive, Enthusiastic." Yeah.
That's neat.
All right. So sorry to interrupt, but we are coming back. Stay by.
Okay.
Welcome back to The Good Life with Jan Jones. If you have a question or want to share your story with Jan or her guests, feel free to join us on the show at 888-346-9141. That's 888-346-9141. Now back to the show with Jan.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Good Life. We are just having the best, most uplifting, inspirational conversation with Randy Simpkins, who really is just a man who has done it all and is continuing to do it all, even after being a living kidney donor. So, Randy, you mentioned we took a little break right there about your recovery and that everything just went as smoothly as possible. And you said the journey just kind of picked up after that. Why don't you start right there and fill us in?
Well, about 6 weeks after the surgery, as I said before, I was already to the point that I couldn't have told you that anything had ever happened. I mean, they literally took the kidney out through my belly button. So you could hardly even see a scar at all. And so 6 weeks after the surgery, another pastor in town who was familiar with my testimony, he said, you know, there were so many God things that happened. You weren't supposed to be there, and you couldn't have matched. They actually said 1 in 10,000 chance, and it happened. So many miracles. Can you come share with our men's group at our church on Saturday morning? So I did. I went and I told them I'd be more than happy to do it, and I went and shared with their men's group. There were about 30 men there, and at the end of that, I shared the whole story that I just shared with you. And at the end of it, they had a Q&A, and a gentleman asked me a question. He said, if you had an opportunity to do it again, would you? And I told him, if I had 200 kidneys in my body, I would do it 199 more times starting tomorrow. I don't know why I said it that way. It just came off the top of my head. So after the Q&A session, these two gentlemen approached me and they said, you seem fine. And I told them, I feel great. And they said, well, how can I do this? And I said, how can you do what? And they said, how can I donate a kidney? I want to do this too. I would like to look into this. So I told them what little bit I knew. I was blown away that they were inspired enough from my story to do that. And a few weeks later, I was asked to come speak at a civic club, at a Kiwanis club in a small town outside of Carrollton. And I went and shared. It was a small audience, maybe 20, 25 people. And I shared, and the same thing happened. A lady came up to me at the end and she said, is there any age requirement or could I donate a kidney? And I said, I don't think so. I think it's all dependent upon your health. I'll tell you what little bit I know. Again, I was shocked that someone was wanting to donate a kidney as a result of hearing how great the need is and how relatively easy the process is. Jan, 38 million people in our country have chronic kidney disease, and most don't even know it yet. But I got to thinking, I know there's 100,000 people in this country that would do the same thing that I did if they knew how great the need was and how relatively easy the process is. We may be familiar with statistics, but how do you get the message out there in a way that's inspiring that people would respond to? I can't go and share my story at 30 people at a time all over the country. But then it hit me. 25 years ago, my 2-year-old son disappeared, and he was missing for 8 hours. And we found him a mile and a half away in the swamp. And that day completely transformed my life. I was not a good father. I was not a good husband. I was a very shallow Christian. I worked at the church. I was minister of music for 12 years. But even doing that, it had become like a job for me. And I thought my job was to work as hard as I could. I was a workaholic. Work as hard as I could 6 days a week. That's how I could provide for my family, give them things that I didn't have growing up. That's how I could provide for the church, write a big fat tithe check every month. But that day, when one of my most precious things that I loved in this life disappeared, and I was the one that was responsible for watching him. He was riding his tricycle on the driveway. He was 2.5. And I was supposed to be watching him. And I went back in the house for 3 or 4 minutes to do an email and for work. And I stepped back outside and he was gone. And that started this long process, and hundreds of people and helicopters and dogs and ATVs on this massive search. And through that process, about 4 hours into it, I found myself alone out in the woods. And I just fell to my face. I'd lost faith. He's gone. He's been missing 4 hours already, 2 years old, with all these people looking and helicopters. And I just buried my face and I just in the pine straw. And I just thought about all of these life experiences of his that I'm going to miss out on. And I pictured him playing ball in the yard, playing high school football, getting married, having kids, and I just pictured a tombstone with his name on it. And I'd said, God, please don't take my son.
Mm.
And I thought, I'm praying this hard. When I opened my eyes, he's going to be standing there, but he wasn't.
Mm.
But he was found 8 hours after he was lost, and he was okay. And that transformed me as a person from that day forward. And so 8 years later, a couple of guys from Hollywood came. They were originally from Georgia, actually, but they came back home to do a movie in our town. And at that time, I was a county commissioner. And so I was called, and I helped them find some different locations to film their movie. And I got to know them. It was really neat to listen to them and talk to them. They were filmmakers. That was kind of cool. And so we
Yeah.
spent the day together. And throughout, at the end of the day, they said, you don't seem like a politician. And I said, thank you. And they said, how did you get involved in politics? And I told them
Yeah,
that
by the way, that's a big compliment.
they said, how did you get involved in politics? And I said, I could never repay this community for what they did for me and my family. So that's why I went into public service, was to give back to them. And I told them the whole story. Well, about a year later, they approached me. It was two men, one's a director, one's a producer, and they just alternate from movie to movie. And they said, my friend has two sons. I have three sons, and we would really like to share your story. We feel like there's a powerful message for fathers. And Crystal and I were opposed to it to start with, but the more we thought about it and prayed, we realized, we go through experiences in life, our testimony, and they're really not ours to keep to ourselves. It's God's action in our life. So if somebody else can learn from our experience, we agreed to do it, as long as they did it as it happened, where it happened. And they did. And that movie is called The Way Home. And Dean Cain played me in that movie. Lionsgate released it in 2010. And Jan, it's been seen tens of millions of times. And we still to this day have people that reach out to us. It's been 15 years almost, and people will still reach out and say, thank you for sharing your story. It had such an impact on me. I know men that have quit their jobs and found something closer to home so they could spend more time with their family as a result. So I got to thinking about the impact that The Way Home had on people. And I thought, well, why not share this story about the kidney transplant, the true story, just like we did with The Way Home, but set up a nonprofit, set up a foundation alongside it that helps promote it. And then you have the film that's being made, and you take the proceeds from the film and you put it back into the nonprofit, and you create a nationwide awareness, make it a bigger film where it's not straight to DVD, but it's in theaters or streaming now across the country, and you get it in front of everyone. I thought it was a harebrained idea, but I had to believe that God put the idea in my head. So I pursued it a little bit. 14 months ago, this was just an idea. And somebody emailed me and sent me a link or an email to a producer that does a lot of movies with Dean Cain. And so I reached out to that producer and I told him my idea. And 3 days later, he came to Atlanta and sat down at an IHOP in Ackworth, Georgia. And I shared the whole idea to him. And it was already in my head, all of it. And he said, I've already talked to Dean about this. And Dean's response was, wait a minute, you want me to play you in another movie? And then he was joking. And he said, no one has ever done anything like this before. You're literally wanting to make a movie whose sole purpose is to save 100,000 lives and impact millions. And he was the first one to say it that way. And Dean is also the one that says this needs to be a bigger budget so we can put it in, so we can get it in front of 100 million people with a nationwide theatrical release. Dean went to Princeton. He's a smart guy. He said that here's the statistics of it. If 100 million people see this story, all we need is 1 out of 1,000 to say, I can do what that guy did, and we will end the wait. And so that's where the idea came from. And we have seen proof of concept. We set up a very, very investor friendly package because we want the movie to be made as fast as possible, because 13 people die every day waiting. And so we've had donations to come flooding in. We have a long ways to go. but we've had investors to come on board, and the script is almost to completion. And Dean did have a stipulation. He said, I want to also produce the movie. I don't want to just be in it, and I want to be on the board of directors of the nonprofit. So Dean is very involved with the foundation. Lori Beth Sykes, that played Crystal in the first movie, she's reprising her role. Same thing. She actually drove with us all the way to West Virginia to spend 3 days with Dean. And we all four, Crystal and I, Dean and Lori Beth, collaborated on how all this needs to happen and what to do. That was only a year ago. And so we're in the high six figures as far as investments, but we need to get another couple of million in there, so that we can get it made. We want to have Forrest Whitaker, someone like that, to play Russell. That's what we can do if we achieve the $5 million mark that we're shooting for. And God is going to provide it. And the most beautiful part, and I know I'm talking so much, I'm not giving you a chance to say anything.
I don't want to say anything. This is amazing. You keep talking.
So the amazing thing is 3 people have already received kidneys just by word of mouth of what we're doing, and dozens have started the process to be tested to donate a kidney. A 27-year-old in our county, last August, his mom called me. She heard what we were doing. And she said, 2 months ago, we found out our son, he thought he had the flu, was in renal failure and had a very short time to live. And then they told us the 100,000 people in front of him, the 8-year wait. And she said, we're desperate. What do we do? And so our very first fundraiser that we did, there was about 70 people there, and he was there, and along with one other person on the transplant wait list. And I shared my story. We told everyone what we're doing. And as a result, those 2 men stood up that needed a kidney. 5 people at that one out of 70, 5 people stepped forward to donate a kidney. And I don't know which one it was or if it was one of those 5, but Jordan got his kidney March 25th. I'm sorry, March 27th. So 6 months after we found out about the need. So it is our goal to help people along the way as we find out. And truth be told, Jan, think about this. And Kirby Smart would be mad at me for saying this, but he just got a $13 million a year contract. The awareness gets put out there if we raise the few $1,000,000 that we need for this to happen. And it would only take a few dollars from a whole bunch of donors, or just, a few that it's a small price to pay to get us there, to create that. And then we're taking the proceeds and we're going out and we're going to establish clubs all over the country that can each adopt their own person in their own community that needs a kidney and help promote it and find that person a kidney and then adopt another person. So we want the need for live kidney donation to be a household topic in every house in the United States. That's what we're going to do.
I am blown away at what you're doing and how quickly this has, like, it's caught momentum and it just keeps growing. And I mean, look, I have to throw this out there because Dean Cain is such a well-known, famous actor. I mean, if anybody remembers him, he was Superman,
That's right.
right? And now he's Superman again, just by partnering with you. You are all heroes, really.
Right.
And I love that you are saying it exactly the way you're saying it. We want to save 100,000 lives and impact millions more, because I can tell you personally, and of course I'm tearing up, but I am here because of a donor and a donor family, because I received a kidney and a pancreas, but every single impact or contribution I get to make is because I am a recipient. And it is paying it forward, and it is living this life where you are contributing and leaving a legacy, but building this legacy while you're here. And your legacy is just so impactful, so inspiring, and so powerful. I mean, we all know, we hear it. If we watch movies, we know the millions and millions and millions of dollars that it takes to make one. And you all have got so many wonderful people partnering with you, but you still have to have that money. So I want everyone to know, where can they go to find you, to donate if they want to learn more? I mean, I want to make sure that we get that out in this podcast before we wrap up. Where can they find you?
Well, End the Wait, ENDTHEWAIT.net. And my cell phone is on there. So I don't care if they call me. This is that important. A lot of people, I've listened to podcasts, I'll hear it on the radio, driving the car, or sitting at home. And I think, what a great cause. I wish I could do something, or I hope somebody does something. But I want your listeners to know they can be a part of this team. They can be part of our team. They can pray. They can donate to our foundation. If they want to, if they're interested in investing, call me. I'll be more than happy to tell them everything about that. It's a really good opportunity there, and it's saving lives. So I would be more than happy for them to reach out to us. Also, Randy at In the Wait is my email. .net, I think, is my email.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I would. I'm so thankful for you allowing me to share my story, and I can't wait to see who's convicted when they hear this and how they respond to that conviction.